The glare of the studio lights felt different tonight. Sharper. More revealing. As the executive producer of Final Plate, I should have been buzzing. This was the live finale, the crown jewel of Apex Culinary Productions. My wife Isabella sat in the front row, a vision in silk blowing me a kiss. I let it hang in the air. Because last night I'd rewatched our home security footage. I saw that same kiss, that same loving look, bestowed upon another man. Chef Julian Maxwell. Our head judge, the man who was about to crown a champion on my show, had already stolen my life. They were sitting 30 feet apart, blissfully unaware. The show was about to begin. My show. And I had written a new ending. Isabella, my Isabella. For 20 years, she'd been the bedrock of my world. We built Apex Culinary Productions from nothing, fueled by late nights and cheap coffee. She was my co-pilot. Now, seeing her smile, so polished and perfect for the cameras, I felt a cold void open in my chest. All I could see was the grainy footage of her hands on his back, her head on his shoulder. Then there was Julian. The Iron Palate, television's most trusted culinary voice. A man I had personally headhunted, brought into my home for dinners, treated like a brother. He called me his mentor. I watched him take his seat at the judges' table, a portrait of composed authority. He exuded a charisma that millions of viewers, and apparently my wife, found irresistible. He caught my eye from across the studio floor and gave a slight, confident nod, a nod between colleagues. I returned it with a tightness in my jaw that ached. The ultimate professionals, playing our parts. They thought they were so clever, hiding in plain sight. They had no idea the final script had been rewritten. The floor manager's voice crackled in my earpiece. "We're live in 5, Mark." 5 minutes. The countdown to their public annihilation had begun. The floor manager's voice was a distant echo. 5 minutes felt like a lifetime and no time at all. My mind reeled back, not in years, but in specific, searing moments. I saw Isabella and me in our tiny apartment 20 years ago, storyboarding our first show on a pizza box because we couldn't afford a whiteboard. We named our company Apex because we were aiming for the summit, together. We were a team, an unbreakable unit. Every success, every failure was shared. When we finally got Final Plate greenlit, we didn't celebrate with champagne. We held each other in our cramped office and cried with relief. That was the woman I married. That was the memory she was now desecrating with every perfect, camera-ready smile. Julian came into our lives 3 years ago. I'd found him plating masterpieces in a cramped Michelin star restaurant downtown. He was brilliant, arrogant, and exactly what the show needed. I took him under my wing. I invited him for Sunday roasts. He'd sit at our table, praising Isabella's cooking, calling me a genius for discovering him. A brother, I'd called him. He just nodded, a smirk playing on his lips that I mistook for gratitude. The change was gradual, a slow poisoning. Isabella started staying late for production meetings I knew nothing about. She became protective of her phone, angling it away when I walked into the room. The easy intimacy we once shared was replaced by a polite, hollow distance. I convinced myself it was the stress of the show, the pressure of maintaining our empire. I was a fool. The doubt became a gnawing certainty last week. It was our anniversary. I'd come home early with flowers, the whole 9 yards. She wasn't there. A text came an hour later. "Sorry, lost track of time at a charity board meeting." But her car was in the garage. A lie. A simple, stupid lie. That's when I opened the security app. My hands were shaking as I scrolled back through the day's footage. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just an explanation. And then I found it. Not from our anniversary, but from the night before. The timestamp read 11:17 p.m. Julian's car pulling into our driveway. The front door opening. Isabella, in her silk robe, leading him inside. I watched them on the living room sofa, the same sofa where we'd drafted our dreams. I saw him trace the line of her jaw. I saw her lean in and whisper something that made him laugh. It was a private, intimate laugh. A laugh that had once been mine. The floor manager's voice cut through the memory, sharp and urgent in my earpiece. "Mark, We're live in 60 seconds. Stand by. I looked from Isabella in the audience to Julian at the judges' table. The memory wasn't a ghost, it was fuel. The lie wasn't just in my home, it was the foundation of my show. 60 seconds. They had no idea that tonight's final ingredient wasn't on a plate. It was the truth. The world didn't shatter. It just froze. I sat there in my home office, the security footage playing on a silent loop on my monitor. The image of Julian's hand on my wife's face was burned onto my retinas. There was no screaming, no breaking things. The producer in me took over. This wasn't a tragedy. It was a plot point. A problem that needed a solution. A story that needed a new ending. My first move was to close the laptop. My second was to pour a glass of water, my hand perfectly steady. This was a hostile takeover of my life, and I would handle it like any other business crisis, with cold, methodical precision. For the next 4 days, I became a ghost in my own home. I moved through the motions of our life with a chilling calmness. I kissed Isabella good morning, the taste of her betrayal like ash on my tongue. I sat in production meetings with Julian, nodding at his critiques of the finalists' dishes while I mentally cataloged every lie he'd ever told me. He once praised a contestant's unflinching honesty. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. They moved around me, confident and careless, wrapped in the arrogance of a secret they thought was safe. They mistook my silence for ignorance. It was observation. I didn't need more emotional proof, but I needed tactical proof. I went through our shared accounts. There it was, a charge from a boutique hotel in Santa Barbara for a writer's retreat Isabella had supposedly taken a loan 2 months ago. Another charge at a high-end jeweler for a bracelet I'd never seen. I cross-referenced the dates with Julian's Instagram. He'd posted a picture from a Santa Barbara pier that same weekend, a smug look on his face. The caption read, "Sometimes you have to get away to appreciate what you have." The bracelet was on Isabella's wrist in a photo from her quote charity board meeting. They weren't just cheating, they were funding it with my money, laughing at me with every transaction. The idea for the finale came to me during the final technical rehearsal. We were testing the massive LED screen that served as our backdrop. We ran the tribute package for our 2 finalists, a montage of their journey, their tearful family interviews, their triumphs, standard, sentimental reality TV fare. The director asked, "Mark, you good with the package? Final sign-off?" And that's when it hit me. A sign-off. The final sign-off. The screen was my canvas. The show was my weapon. I had access to everything. The editing suites, the control room, the master files. My life's work was about to become my life's masterpiece of revenge. That night, I told Isabella the first had to pull an all-nighter at the studio to handle a graphics issue. She feigned sympathy, touching my arm and telling me not to work too hard. I drove to the empty Apex offices, the key card feeling heavier in my hand. I didn't go to my office. I went straight to Edit Bay 3. I locked the door, pulled the raw security footage from my drive, and began to work. I wasn't just cutting clips together. I was crafting a narrative. I intercut the footage of them in my home with clips from the show. Julian praising loyalty and integrity. Isabella in the audience blowing me a kiss. I added the hotel receipts, the jewelry bill, the Instagram posts. I timed it to the show's soaring emotional score. It was the most compelling, devastating piece of television I had ever produced. As I exported the final file, renaming it _final_tribute_V7_master, I felt nothing but a cold, clean certainty. I replaced the file on the main server myself. Only one other person knew about the switch, my lead playback tech, a young kid named Leo whom I'd hired straight out of film school. I'd called him into my office yesterday, told him there was a last-minute change to an immediate, irreversible course of action, and that he'd be rewarded for his loyalty. I didn't have to threaten him. The promise of a future at Apex was enough. "Are you absolutely sure about this, Mr. Sullivan?" Leo's voice was a nervous whisper over the headset, his face pale on the monitor in front of me. We were in the control room now, a high-tech bunker buzzing with the controlled chaos of a live broadcast. "I'm sure, Leo," I replied, my voice dangerously calm. Your job isn't to be sure, your job is to run backquote, final underscore tribute underscore V7 underscore master, backquote, when I give the cue, nothing else. He swallowed hard and nodded, his eyes fixed on his console. The show's theme music swelled, a triumphant orchestral piece that felt like a funeral dirge. On the wall of monitors, I saw it all. I saw our host, Chloe, hit her mark, her smile, 1,000 watts of manufactured joy. I saw the two finalists, trembling with anticipation. I saw Julian, leaning back in his judge's chair, the king in his court. And I saw Isabella in the front row, looking up at the stage, then glancing towards the control room booth, her expression one of wifely pride. A perfect performance. Welcome back to the live finale of Final Plate. Chloe's voice boomed through the studio and into my headset. The crowd erupted. Our two phenomenal chefs have cooked their hearts out, but only one can take home the title. It has been an emotional, unforgettable journey. I watched Julian nod sagely for the camera, a master of feigned sincerity. Isabella dabbed at the corner of her eye, playing the part of the emotionally invested partner. They were so good, they'd had a lot of practice. My focus narrowed to a single monitor, a tight shot of the main LED screen behind the stage. It was currently displaying the show's fiery logo, my canvas. Before we hear the judges' final verdict, Chloe continued, her voice softening, let's take one last look at the path that led us here. Roll the final tribute. The floor manager's voice was a sharp command in my ear. Stand by, playback, rolling tribute package on Mark's cue. Every head in the control room turned to me. The world seemed to slow down. I could feel the weight of 20 years, of every shared dream and secret betrayal, resting on this single moment. I met Leo's wide, terrified eyes through the glass. This was it. The point of no return. I lifted my hand, held his gaze, and gave a single, deliberate nod. The studio lights dimmed. The triumphant music faded, replaced by the soft, poignant piano intro I had chosen myself. The massive screen behind the stage flickered. The audience leaned in. Isabella smiled, expecting a montage of onions being chopped and tears being shed. Julian adjusted his tie, ready for his close-up. The first image to appear wasn't a chef. It was the grainy, infrared footage of my front door swinging open at 11:17 p.m. A collective, confused murmur rippled through the studio audience. On the massive screen, the image was dark, grainy. Not the slick, high-definition tribute they were expecting. I saw the floor manager speaking frantically into his headset, looking up at my control booth with panic in his eyes. He thought it was a technical failure. Isabella's smile faltered, replaced by a delicate frown of concern. She glanced at Julian, who simply shrugged, a silent message of, "What can you do?" passing between them. He was still the king in his castle, annoyed by the incompetence of the staff. They had no idea the staff was following a new script. Then, the shot changed. The camera angle shifted to reveal the interior of my living room. My sofa. My wife, in her silk robe, her back to the camera, and a man's arm, draped possessively around her shoulder. A gasp went through the crowd. This was not a tribute to a finalist. What is this? I heard Chloe, our host, whisper into her live mic, "Mark, what's happening?" I ignored her. My eyes were locked on the monitors. "Camera 3, I said into my headset, my voice even and low. "Push in on Isabella. Tight." The operator hesitated for a split second before obeying. On screen 2, her face filled the frame, her eyes wide with dawning horror. On the main screen, the grainy footage continued. The man turned his head. The infrared camera captured his profile in stark black and white. It was unmistakably Julian Maxwell. The crowd's gasp became a roar, a wave of shock and outrage that washed over the studio. I watched Julian's face on my monitor. The mask of detached arrogance evaporated, replaced by raw, primal fear. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. He half rose from his chair, his eyes darting from the screen to Isabella, then to the dark window of my control booth. "Camera 1, hold on, Julian," I commanded. "Give me the two-shot. I want to see them both." Now the audio I'd layered in began to play. It was Julian's voice, from an interview in the first episode. A great chef is built on a foundation of trust and integrity. His voice boomed through the studio speakers, smooth and authoritative. On screen, he leaned in and kissed my wife. The hypocrisy was so absolute it was beautiful. The montage continued. A high-resolution graphic of a hotel receipt from Santa Barbara appeared. Guest Isabella Sullivan. 1 King Suite. The date was perfectly legible. Beside it, Julian's smug Instagram post from that same weekend faded in. Getting away to appreciate what you have, the audience booed. Isabella had her hands over her mouth, her body shaking. She was no longer a polished executive's wife. She was just a woman exposed. Next, the jeweler's bill. Item: $18K white gold diamond bracelet. The price was obscene. Then, the video cut to a high-definition clip of Isabella at a network party just last month, laughing, the same diamond bracelet glittering on her wrist as she held a champagne flute. Camera 3. I ordered, my voice like ice. Get me the bracelet, now. The camera operator, now understanding his role in this public execution, zoomed in with perfect precision. On the monitor, a close-up of Isabella's wrist, the diamonds catching the studio lights, a glittering monument to her lies. The final sequence was my masterpiece. A split screen. On the left, the grainy security footage of their embrace in my home. On the right, a crystal-clear clip from our wedding video. Me, 27 and full of stupid hope, sliding a ring onto Isabella's finger. The audio was our vows. To be faithful, my younger self said, in sickness and in health, for as long as we both shall live. The show's soaring, emotional score swelled for a final agonizing moment, then cut to absolute, deafening silence. The screen went black. For 5 seconds, nobody moved. The air was thick, with a silence I had never heard in a television studio. The host stood frozen. The finalists looked on, forgotten. Then, chaos. I watched the pandemonium unfold below me for a moment before keying my microphone, not for the broadcast, but for the crew's internal comms. My voice cut through the noise with surgical precision. Leo, kill the broadcast feed. Go to commercial black. We are off the air. The wall of monitors flickered to a generic network logo. Security, I continued, my gaze fixed on Julian, who was now being surrounded by flash photography from the audience's phones. Escort Mr. Maxwell from the judges, table, and from the studio. His access is revoked. I turned my attention to the front row, where Isabella was now sobbing, shielded by a stunned friend. Security Team 2, please assist Ms. Sullivan in leaving the premises. She is to be considered a trespasser if she refuses. There was a frantic energy in the control room, but no one questioned me. I was the producer. I was in command. I took a deep breath. This wasn't just about humiliation. It was about survival. Janet, I said to my assistant over the comms, get our corporate counsel on the line, now. I paused, looking down at the empire I had built, now fractured but still mine. Tell them to file the injunction and immediately execute the Apex Partnership Contingency Clause. The one for gross misconduct and breach of fiduciary duty. It was a clause I'd had a lawyer draft 3 days ago, a poison pill hidden deep in our corporate bylaws. It stripped Isabella of her executive powers and her share of the company voting rights, effective immediately upon proof of actions that brought the company into public disrepute. And I had just provided that proof to an audience of millions. Below me, security was leading a stunned, ashen-faced Julian away. Isabella was being helped to her feet, her face a mask of ruin. They were no longer titans of my world. They were just collateral damage. I had burned my life to the ground, but I was the only one left holding the match. I stepped out of the control room into a wall of noise. The air backstage was electric with panic. Crew members were rushing past, speaking in hushed, frantic tones into their headsets. No one looked at me. It was as if I were a bomb that had just gone off, and they were all afraid of the fallout. I felt a strange sense of detachment, like I was watching a scene I had produced, observing the actors hit their marks perfectly. Down the long corridor that led to the executive offices I saw them, not together. The security detail was professional, keeping them separated. Julian was first, flanked by 2 guards, his face a grotesque mask of disbelief and rage. He saw me. For a second our eyes met across the chaotic hallway. The iron palate, the man who judged others on their composition and balance, was utterly undone. There was no charisma left, no authority. Just the raw, pathetic anger of a man who'd been caught. He opened his mouth to shout something, but a guard put a firm hand on his shoulder and steered him toward the exit. He vanished into the night. A few yards behind, Isabella was being escorted out a different door. She wasn't sobbing anymore. Her face was pale, her makeup smudged, but her expression was one I'd never seen before. Pure, venomous hatred. It was directed entirely at me. The love of my life, the woman I'd built an empire with, looked at me as if I were a stranger who had just burned down her home. In a way, I had. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. The look was a vow of a war yet to come. I held her gaze until she too was gone, feeling nothing but the cold, clean finality of an amputation. My phone began to vibrate, a furious, insistent buzzing. The caller ID read, Stan Weissman, Network President. I let it ring twice more before answering, stepping into the quiet sanctuary of my office and closing the door. Mark, what in the goddamn hell was that? Stan's voice wasn't a question. It was a detonation. You torpedoed your own finale. Liv, are you insane? The advertisers are lighting me up. The press is calling it a meltdown. I sat down behind my desk, frilled Nesk, and swiveled the chair to face the window overlooking the city lights. Stan, I said, my voice perfectly level. Calm down. Calm down? Calm down? You just turned my flagship reality show into the world's most expensive divorce court filing. No, I corrected him, my tone sharpening just enough to cut through his hysteria. I saved it. Julian Maxwell, the face of culinary integrity, was a fraud. Isabella Sullivan, my executive partner, was compromised. They were a cancer on this production. I excised it. There was a moment of sputtering silence on the other end of the line. You call that an excision? That was a public execution, Mark. You could have handled this quietly. Then let the lie continue, I shot back. Let our brand be built on a foundation of hypocrisy? Imagine the tabloid story that would have eventually broken. Stan, TV's toughest judge caught cheating with producer's wife. It would have delegitimized every season, past and future. I didn't create the scandal. I just controlled the narrative. I chose the when, the where, and the how. I used my show to tell the truth. Isn't that what good television is supposed to do? He was quiet for a long moment. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. The crisis manager replacing the enraged executive. The ratings for tonight would be astronomical. The buzz would be deafening. What's your next move? He finally asked, his voice low and cautious. The board of Apex Productions has already been notified, I said, the lie rolling smoothly off my tongue. The call to my lawyer was my next move, but Stan didn't need to know that. Isabella's executive authority has been suspended, pending a full investigation into breach of contract. Julian Maxwell's contract contains a standard morality clause, which he has publicly violated. He's finished. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial pitch. Tomorrow morning, Stan, Apex will release a statement. We're shocked, we're devastated, but our commitment to integrity is unwavering. We're already storyboarding a new spin-off. Final Plate, Second Chances. A whole new season built around authenticity. The comeback. The viewers will eat it up. I didn't blow up your #1 show, Stan. I just gave it its most compelling season ever. The line was silent. I had taken his catastrophe and reframed it as an opportunity. I had sold him my revenge as a brilliant marketing strategy. "Send me the press release before it goes out," he said, and hung up. I set the phone down on the polished wood of the desk. My office was silent. Across from me was Isabella's desk, her meticulously arranged pens, and a framed photo of the two of them from an awards ceremony years ago, their arms around each other, incandescent with success. I picked it up, the weight of it feeling alien in my hand. For a moment I saw the ghost of the woman I loved, the partner I'd built this all with. Then I saw the grainy security footage superimposed over her smiling face. I opened her top desk drawer, placed the frame inside face down, and closed it. The click of the wood was the sound of a coffin lid shutting. A soft knock came at the door. It was Leo, his face still ashen. "Mr. Sullivan? Is everything?" He couldn't finish the sentence. I gestured for him to come in. "You did your job perfectly, Leo. You followed a direct order from your executive producer." I walked to my mini fridge and pulled out a bottle of water, tossing it to him. He caught it clumsily. "You're the best playback tech I have. As of tomorrow, you're the head of the department. With a commensurate raise, your loyalty is valued here." His eyes widened, a flicker of relief warring with his fear. "Thank you, sir. You helped expose a rot that was poisoning this company," I said, cutting him off with a cold finality that left no room for debate. "Go home, get some sleep, don't talk to anyone." He nodded quickly and left, closing the door softly behind him. I was alone again. I pulled out my phone. It was a wildfire. #Final Plate Finale was the #1 trend worldwide. News alerts from every major entertainment outlet were flooding my screen. Live TV meltdown at Apex Productions. Producer exposes wife's affair on air. They were calling it a catastrophe, a shocking personal implosion. They were wrong. This wasn't a meltdown, it was a cleansing fire. I had cauterized a wound in the most public way possible, ensuring the infection could never fester in the shadows. I hadn't just won, I'd set the terms of the war and burned the battlefield so nothing could ever grow there again. This was not just revenge, it was control. I scrolled to my contacts, my thumb hovering over the name I'd saved 3 days ago. Arthur Vance. Counsel. I pressed the call button, the first move in a game that was far from over. Was I justified in exposing them publicly at the showcase, or did my revenge go too far?